Pahlavi text, translated by E.W. West, Part 1, the Bundahis Bahman, Yast, and Shayast, Shayast, Sacred Books of the East, Oxford University Press, 1860. Concluding remarks. The Pahlavi texts selected for translation in this volume are specimens of three distinct species of writings. Thus, the Bundahis and its appendix, which deal chiefly with cosmogony, myths, and traditions, may be roughly compared to the Book of Genesis. The Bahman Yast, which professes to be prophetical, may be likened unto the Apocalypse, and the Shayast, which treats of religious laws regarding impurity, sin, ritual, and miscellaneous matters, bears some resemblance to Leviticus, but, though thus dealing with very different subjects, these texts appear to have all originated in much the same manner, a manner which is characteristic of the oldest class of the Pahlavi writings still extant. All three are full of translations from old Avesta texts, collected together probably in the latter days of the Sasanian dynasty, and finally rearranged sometime after the conquest of Persia by al-Muslimin, so that practically they may be taken as representing the ideas entertained of their prehistoric religion by Persians in the 6th century, but modified so far as to suit the taste and exigencies of the 10th. But, notwithstanding the wide range of subjects embraced by these texts, it would be rash for the reader to assume that they afford him sufficient information for forming a decided opinion as to the character of the Parsi religion. The text translated in this volume contain barely 1/11th part of the religious literature extant in the Pahlavi language, without taking the Pahlavi versions of existing Avesta texts into account, which latter are even more important than the former, from a religious point of view, as they are considered more authoritative by the Parsis themselves. What proportion the literature extant may bear to that which is lost is impossible to guess, but omitting all consideration of the possible contents of the lost literature, it is obvious that the remaining 10/11ths of that which is extant may contain much which would modify any opinion based merely upon the 1/11th here translated. What the untranslated portion actually contains, no one really knows. The best Pahlavi scholar can never be sure that he understands the contents of a Pahlavi text unless he has fully translated it. No amount of careful reading can make him certain that he does not misunderstand some essential part of it, and were he to assert the contrary, he would be merely misleading others and going astray himself. How far the translations in this volume will enable the reader to judge of the Parsi religion may perhaps be best understood by considering how far careful perusal of the books of Genesis, Leviticus, and the Revelation, which constitute 1/11th part of the Protestant Bible, would enable him to judge of Christianity without any further information. But though these translations must be considered merely as a contribution towards a correct account of medieval Zoroastrianism, the Bundahis does afford some very definite information upon one of the fundamental doctrines of that faith. The Parsi religion has long been represented by its opponents as a dualism, and this accusation, made in good faith by Muslim writers and echoed more incautiously by Christians, has been advanced so strenuously that it has often been admitted even by Parsis themselves as regards the medieval form of their faith. But neither party seems to have fairly considered how any religion which admits the personality of an evil spirit in order to account for the existence of evil can fail to become a dualism to a certain extent. If, therefore, the term is to be used in controversy, it behoves those who use it to define the limits of objectionable dualism with great precision, so as not to include most of the religions of the world, their own among the number. If it be necessary for a dualism that the evil spirit be omnipresent, omniscient, almighty, or eternal, then is the Parsi religion no dualism. The Bundahis distinctly asserts that the evil spirit is not omniscient and almighty, chapter 116, that his understanding is backward, 139, so that he was not aware of the existence of Harmazd till he arose from the abyss and saw the fight, 1:9, that he is unobservant and ignorant of the future, 1:19, till it is revealed to him by Harmazd, 1:21, that his creatures perish at the resurrection, 1:7 and 12, and he himself becomes impotent, 1:21 and 3:1, and will not be 1:3 and 30:32. Nowhere is he supposed to be in two places at once, or to know what is occurring elsewhere than in his own presence. So far his powers are considerably less than those generally assigned by Christians to the devil, who is certainly represented as being a more intelligent and ubiquitous personage. On the other hand, Ahriman is able to produce fiends and demons. Chapter 1, verse 10 and 24. And the noxious creatures are said to be his. Chapter 3, verse 15. Chapter 14, 30. Chapter 18, 2. In which respects he has probably rather more power than the devil, although the limits of the latter's means of producing evil are by no means well defined. The origin and end of Ahriman appear to be left as uncertain as those of the devil, and altogether the resemblance between these two ideas of the evil spirit is remarkably close, in fact almost too close to admit of the possibility of there being ideas of different origin. The only important differences are that Zoroastrianism does not believe in an eternity of evil as Christianity does, and that Christianity has been content to leave all its other ideas about the devil in a very hazy and uncertain form, while Zoroastrianism has not shrunk from carrying similar ideas to their logical conclusion. If therefore a belief in Ahriman as the author of evil makes the Parsi religion a dualism, it is difficult to understand why a belief in the devil as the author of evil does not make Christianity also a dualism. At any rate, it is evident from the Bundahis that a Christian is treading on hazardous ground when he objects to Zoroastrianism on the score of its dualism. Another misrepresentation of the Parsi religion is shown to have no foundation in fact. By a passage in the selections of Zadspharim, several writers, both Greek and Armenian, contemporaries of the Sasanian dynasty, represent the Persians as believing that both Harmazd and Ahriman were produced by an eternal being, who was evidently a personification of the Avesta phrase for boundless time. This view was apparently confirmed by a passage in Anquetil's Duperron's French translation of the Vendidad, 19 verses 32 to 34. But this has long been known to be a mistranslation due to Anquetil's ignorance of Avesta grammar, so that the supposed doctrine of boundless time being the originator of everything is not to be found in the Avesta. Still, it might have sprung up in Sasanian times. But the selections of Zadspharim distinctly state that Harmazd produced the creature, Zorvan, precisely the term used in the phrase boundless time in the Avesta. Here, time, although personified, is represented as a creature of Harmazd, produced after the first appearance of Ahriman, which contradicts the statement of the Greek and Armenian writers completely, and shows how little reliance can be placed upon the assertions of foreigners regarding matters which they view with antipathy or prejudice. And we see in, Surah 76 of the Quran and some related hadith that you don't revile time because God created time, or God is known through time, but God's essence isn't time. It's said that the Europeans that built the megaliths worshipped a deity of time, and certainly in places that would have been closer to Zoroastrianism in that sense. With reference to the general plan of these translations of Pahlavi texts, a few remarks seem necessary. In the first place, it will be obvious to any attentive reader of this introduction that a translator of Pahlavi has not merely to translate, but also to edit the original text, and in some cases, he has even to discover it. Next, as regards the translation, it has been already mentioned, page 26, that the translator's object is to make it as literal as possible, in order therefore to check the inevitable tendency of free translations to wander from the meaning of the original text. All extra words added to complete the sense, unless most distinctly understood in the original, are italicized in this translation, and in all cases that seem doubtful, the reader's attention is called to the fact by a note, though it is possible that some doubtful matters may be overlooked. The notes deal not only with explanations that may be necessary for the general reader, but also with various readings and other details that may be useful to scholars. They are therefore very numerous, though some passages may still be left without sufficient explanation. References to the Vendadad, Yasna, and Visparad are made to Spiegel's edition of the original text, not because that edition is superior or even equal in accuracy to that of Westergaard, but because it is the only edition which gives the Pahlavi translations, because its selections are shorter and therefore reference to them is more definite, and because the only English translation of the Avesta hitherto existing is based upon Spiegel's edition and is divided into the same sections. No attempt has been made to trace any of the myths or traditions farther back than the Avesta, whence their descent is a fact that can hardly be disputed. To trace them back to earlier times, to a supposed Indo-Iranian personification or poetic distortion of meteorological phenomena, would be, in the present state of our knowledge, merely substituting plausible guesses for ascertained facts. In many cases, indeed, we have really no right to assume that an Avesta myth has descended from any such Indo-Iranian origin, as there have been ample opportunities for the infiltration of myths from other sources, yet unknown, among the many nations with which the religion of the Avesta has come in contact, both before and since the time of Zarathustra. For notwithstanding the ingenuous rhetoric of the expounders of myths, it is still as unsafe, from a scientific point of view, to disbelieve the former existence of Zarathustra as it is to doubt that of Moses or any other practically prehistoric personage, merely because mythical tales have gathered about his name in latter times, as they always do about the memory of any individual who has become famous or revered. In many cases, the original Pahlavi word is appended in parentheses to its English equivalent in the translation. This has been done for the sake of explanation when the word is technical or rare, or the translation is unusual. For with regard to technical terms, it has been considered best in nearly all cases to translate them by some explanatory phrase, in preference to filling the translation with foreign words which would convey little or no distinct meaning to the general reader. Some of these technical terms have almost exact equivalents in English, such as those translated resurrection and demon, or can be well expressed by descriptive phrases such as sacred twigs or sacred cakes. Other terms are only approximately rendered by such words as archangel and angel. Others can hardly be expressed at all times by the same English words, but must change according to the context, such as the term variously rendered by worship, ceremonial, prayer, or rites. While the meaning of some few terms is so technical, complicated, or uncertain that it is safer to use the Pahlavi word itself, such as Tanapuhar, Prasast, Getikarid, Devazda Homast, and so on. The following is a list of nearly all the technical terms that have been translated with the English equivalents generally used to express them. Afrin, blessing. Aharmok, apostate, heretic. Aharubo, righteous. Aharubu dad, almsgiving. Akdino, infidel. Ameshospend, archangel. Armest, helpless. Asthomand, material. Usofried, Propitiation, offering. Bago Bakto, divine providence. Barasom, sacred twigs or twig bundle. Barasumdan, twig stand. Dakmak, who's Kazan, depository for the dead. Dashtanistan, place for menstruation. Dino, religion, revelation, religions, rites. Remember in the Bible how women are supposed to sit somewhere different when they are menstruating. Drayan Gu Yisni, unseasonable chatter. Drivand, wicked. Drono, sacred cake. Drug, fiend. Frashakar, renovation of the universe. Fravahar, guardian spirit. Fravardikan, days devoted to the guardian spirits. Ganrak, Ma Inok, evil spirit. Garzisen, confession of sin. Gos, period of the day, time. Gasanbar, seasonal festival. Gasno, feast. Ga Ustak, Avestin Ga Us. Thou, meat offering, sacred butter. Gavid, Rustikan, the heterodox. Give, Avestin Ga Us, Givya, sacred milk. Gomez, bull's urine. Hamemal, accuser. Hamred, direct pollution, contagion. Hazarak, millennium. Hikar, bodily refuse. Kar, duty. Kishvar, region. Kayabit, destroyer. Kraftstar, noxious creature. Kvetut Das, next of kin marriage. Yeah, that's really something they say. Kirfak, good works. Kustik, sacred thread girdle. Mug, stone evolution seat. Ma'inok, spirit. Marg Argon, worthy of death. Mortal sin. Miazd, feast, sacred feast. Nasai, corpse, dead matter. Nasai Katak, corpse chamber. Nirang, religious formula, ritual. Nirangastan, code of religious formulas. Niya Yisan, salutation. Padam, mouth veil. Padiyavi, evolution, ceremonial evolution. Pahlum Ahvan, best existence. Paitred, indirect pollution, infection. Parahome, home juice. From the ephedra. There's reference to how Haoma is opium, marijuana, and ephedra and 37 other plants. There's that whole recipe. But Parik, witch. Patiti, renunciation of sin. Patiyarak, adversary. Poryodkeshi, primitive faith. Rod, chief, spiritual chief. Primate, high priest. Luistakhez, resurrection. Satui, the three knights. Seda, demon. Shapik, sacred shirt. Shna Yisan, propitiation, gratification. Shnuman, dedication formula, propitiation. Spinak, Mainok, beneficent spirit. Tenu'e, Pasino, future existence. Togisan, retribution. Tora'e, Kadudad, primeval ox. Vag, inward power. the garrison, atonement for sin, Vishad, Dubarison, Vishad, Dubarisni, burning about uncovered, Yast, no, ritual, Yast, prayers, ritual, form of prayer, worship, consecration, Yastano, to consecrate, to solemnize, perpetuate, reverence, Yatuk, wizard, not wizard in the sense of wise man, but, demon worshipping person, right? Yazdan, angels, sacred beings, celestial beings, God. Yazasan, ceremonial ceremony, sacred ceremony, ceremony, worship, reverence, rites, prayer. Yadato, angel, Zan, commentary, Zohar, or Zor, holy water, Zot, officiating priests. With regard to orthography of Pahlavi names and words, the advantage has been taken to the system of transliteration adopted for the series of translations of the sacred books of the East by making use of italics for the purpose of distinguishing between certain Pahlavi letters, which are probably pronounced very nearly alike. Thus, besides usual letters, the straight line for V and more like the Arabic K, but sort of like the S. For Z, the Pahlavi letter, that kind of looks like the E, is often used to denote those same sounds, and in such cases are represented by the italic letters V and Z. An extension of the same mode of distinction to the letters L and R would be desirable, but has not been attempted in this volume. These two letters are usually written, like a shepherd's crook, but in a few words, they are represented by R by that thing, kind of like a 5. It goes in like that. In which cases, they would be better expressed by the italics L and R. Some attempt has been made to adhere to one uniform orthography in such names as occur frequently, but as there is no such uniformity in these various languages and writings quoted, nor even in the same manuscript, some deviations can hardly be avoided. In conclusion, it may be remarked that a translator of Pahlavi generally begins his career by undervaluing the correctness of Pahlavi text and the literary ability of their authors, that he can hardly proceed farther without finding abundant reasons for altering his opinion of both. His depreciatory view of Pahlavi literature is generally due partly to want of knowledge and partly to his trusting too much to the vile perversions of Pahlavi text, usually supplied by Pazand writers. But as his knowledge of Pahlavi increases, he becomes better able to appreciate the literary merits of the text. If the readers should have already formed some low estimate of the ability of Pahlavi writers, it may be hoped that these translations would afford him sufficient reason for changing his opinion. If not, they will have signally failed in doing those writers justice.